And with approving or amending the agenda, does anybody have any changes to the agenda tonight?
Mr. Mayor, I have two.
Okay, Bill,
I would like to move consent agenda item 2.7 and 2.10 down to general business.
okay. I'll second. Move the approve the 2024 compensation table and approve the hiring of the planner to the end of general business. So 2.7 will become 6.4 and 2.10 will be 6.5. Anybody else have any changes? Otherwise, I would take a motion to approve the agenda. We'll make a motion to approve. Second. Thank you, Leroy. Thank you, Jay. So I've got a motion and a second to approve the agenda with two changes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Consent agenda. Those items on the council agenda which are considered routine or non-controversial are included as part of the consent agenda. Unless a council member specifically requested an item on the consent agenda be removed and considered separately, items on the consent agenda are considered under one motion, a second, and a vote. Any item removed from consent agenda shall be placed at the end of general business. Tonight on the consent agenda, we have November 6, 2023, City Council meeting minutes, claim approval and transfer of funds, approval of the annual liquor license renewal for 2024 for Heritage Links, approve resolution 2023-33, adopting a Minnesota General Records Retention Schedule for cities, motion to adopt Mission Square as the 457 plan provider for the city of Credit River employees, a motion to move $184,000 from reserved Monterey Heights South Passage funds to non-reserved Monterey Heights South Passage fund, resolution 2023-34, declaring equipment surplus and authorizing sale or other disposition, and authorization to release a request for qualifications for engineering services. Is there anything on the consent agenda that anybody would like to remove? Hearing none, I'd take a motion to approve consent agenda. Thank you, Abe.
I'll second.
Thank you, Bill. Got a motion and a second to approve consent agenda. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Brings us to open forum. The public forum is intended to afford the public an opportunity to address concerns to the council. The public forum will be no longer than 30 minutes in length, and each presenter will have no more than 5 minutes to speak. Topics of discussion are restricted to local governmental topics rather than private or political agendas. The council may discuss but will not take formal action on public forum presentations. Is there anybody who'd like to speak in open forum tonight? Okay, hearing none, we will close open forum and move to general business. General business number one, resolution 2023-31, denying a comprehensive plan amendment from urban expansion reserved to commercial. Planner Nash, I will let you introduce the subject for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a proposal to only do a comprehensive plan amendment for just shy of 140 acres in the city. The properties are listed on the screen right there. There's 6 different property owners involved. The properties are located within our long-term sewer service area and are guided for urban expansion reserve at this point in time, holding those for future urban development with municipal water and sewer on them. The planning commission, kind of going off script, the planning commission did recommend denial of the comprehensive plan amendment at their October meeting following a public hearing. We have in your packet, we have all the items that the planning commission saw, including, and then in addition, a draft resolution, including findings of fact for that denial. And then today we did receive a letter from Jennifer Haskamp, who is representing the property owner with additional information that they would like to enter into the record. That letter was emailed to you this afternoon and is in front of you as well this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, and otherwise I'll pass it back to the council.
Okay, thank you, Planner Nash. So again, this comes with a recommendation from the Planning Commission to deny. The public hearing was held at the Planning Commission, and all that information was brought to you guys. believe that there's representation from the applicant in the audience tonight, if anybody had any questions for them. Otherwise, does anybody have any questions or comments for Planner Nash or staff? Okay, then is anybody need any discussion, or anybody ready for any motion this time?
Well, I'll make a motion to accept the planning commission's recommendation to deny the application for a comprehensive plan amendment change.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Markert. Do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second that.
Councilmember Zanto seconds that motion. I've got a motion and a
Excuse me, Mayor, we do need to, I mean, if your motion is to approve the contents of the resolution, we do need a specific approval or a motion to approve the resolution. So if you want to do it in 2 steps, that's fine, or if you want to amend your motion to.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to amend my motion to approve tonight's resolution in front of us related to accepting the planning commission's recommendation to deny the application for the comprehensive plan amendment. Good.
all right,
Yes.
and do you
I'll
still
still
second
second,
the
yes.
amended motion? Okay. So I've got a motion and a second to approve resolution 2023-31 denying the comprehensive plan amendment from urban expansion reserve to commercial. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Next, we'll move to resolution 2023-35, accepting a feasibility study and calling for a hearing on the improvements for the 2024 overlay project. Engineer Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a few points I'd like to discuss with the council, just because this is a fairly large project. And there are a couple of unique circumstances, so I think it would be best if we kind of follow along and so I think it'd be best if we kind of follow along in the feasibility report and just take a quick look at the different project areas. The first project area is shown on page 2 of the report is West Side Drive. That's fairly straightforward. It's a loop road starting at 170th Street and ending at 170th Street. The next road, Pebble Brook Court, starting at 170th Street and ending in the cul-de-sac. And then the next road is Palomino Drive, starting at County Road 8, and in the cul-de-sac. Again, all those are pretty straightforward, pretty standard. We assess on a per unit basis. But now if we keep on moving to page 5, so now we're looking at territory on the south side of County Road 8. There's one thing I want to point out here, and that is Dakota Avenue on the south side of County Road 8. Dakota Avenue south of County Road 8 is not proposed to be included in this project. That road was overlaid in 2017 when the Reverence subdivision was constructed. So it's kind of on a different timeline than the remaining roads in the territory. And then, excuse me, if we turn the page to page 6, a couple of things I want to point out on this page. First of all, Dakota Avenue from County Road 8 to the north cul-de-sac. That's designated in our in some of our road plans as a collector roadway, which means that we would apply an extra 1/2 inch thickness. So instead of the 1.5 inch thickness, which is standard for our local roads, Dakota Avenue would receive a 2 inch thick overlay. I also want to point out on this map that all the properties proposed to be assessed are indicated with like a yellow outline, and they have a number on them representing the benefiting property number. One thing specifically I want to point out is none of the HOA owned property is proposed to be assessed. So if you're familiar with the territory, there's a lot of CSTS property, and similar with our past practice that we use for Stonebridge and Monterey Heights South Passage, those properties are not proposed to be assessed. But territory is a little bit unique because we also have the lodge. And I discussed this with our city attorney. There are a couple of ways to approach this, but we're viewing the lodge as a very nice amenity with the territory. It doesn't generate any of its own traffic. All the existing properties or all the residents in the territory, it can only be used by them. It's not open for commercial business. It's not open to the public. And so for that reason, it's not included as a benefiting property. So I just wanted to point that out because it is a little bit unique. Kind of a non-standard issue. So, and then the other thing that I wanted to point out is on the north side of this project, we just received a preliminary plat application for the Yellowstone of Credit River. So our past practice has been to assess indirect benefiting properties 1/4 unit per lot. So in other words, 1/4 assessment amount per lot that indirectly benefits. That's going to be a little bit hard to define because some of the future lots will access via 210th and some of them will access via Dakota Avenue. But the important thing is that we identify it as a benefiting property now. And remember, this is a public improvement hearing, so we're just identifying the proposed properties to be assessed. And then the actual amount will be determined at a later date prior to the assessment hearing. So in this preliminary estimate or in the feasibility report, we estimated or based the assessment amount on 46 lots at a 1/4 lot or a 1/4 unit each, which result in an assessment of $27,945 for that property. So again, we can revisit that number later as we learn more about the Yellowstone development. Also wanted to mention, related to that, if the Yellowstone comes forward, receives a plat approval in 2024 and constructs in 2024, we may want to consider delaying the improvements for Dakota Avenue until after the major road construction is done.
Right.
So it's we had the exact same or a very similar situation with Lake Estates off of Broadview Drive. Broadview Drive was scheduled to receive an overlay in the year or two previous. And we delayed that overlay until basically all the, the heaviest traffic is when they're building the roads. So they're hauling truck after truck of sand, gravel, and bituminous mixture. So Evan explained those items. The total estimated project cost for this project is $1,027,500. And again, similar to our past practice, we are proposing that the city pays for that additional 1/2 inch of bituminous on Dakota Avenue. That amount is $28,770, so that comes off the top, so to speak. Excuse me. The remaining amount then is proposed to be assessed to the benefiting properties. So that would result in an assessment amount of $2,430 per unit, which is actually a very nice number because it's there's more density in the project areas this year. So
Makes a big difference.
yeah, it's slightly lower than we've seen in the past. So with that, I will stand for questions.
Okay. Thank you, Engineer Nelson. Questions?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Councilman Marker.
Dakota County Collector, it's a collector roadway today,
Dakota Avenue.
Dakota Avenue.
That's correct.
Did we do the extra 1/4 inch when in 2017 on the south side?
I believe so. I don't have that information with me tonight.
It's not a collector road today, but it's expected to be in the next 20 years or according to our comp plan, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So there are two things. The one item is maybe 10 years ago, the town board at the time, and myself designated all the roads which we thought were collectors. And at that time, the township, and Dakota Avenue was identified as one of the collectors. It's Dakota Avenue, 170th, 165th, Judicial Road. Basically anything that receives a lot of traffic from properties that don't directly front on it. So
It's gonna be though 15, 20 years before that becomes a collector road, correct? I mean, right now it's a dead end according to the map, right?
well, it's also designated as a collector in our comp plan.
Right,
So it's designated as collector now,
right.
but
I'm just wondering if we could wait and do the extra quarter inch when there's more development down there. Unless it's gonna be in the next 5 years and it's gonna be a collector road, because right now it wouldn't be considered a collector road, right? Because it ends. It ends on the north side of the.
it would be considered a collector road now because all the other roads feed into it. Pine Tree Road, Bitter Bush Pass, Prairie Grass Pass, Whisper Way, they all feed into Dakota. If you look at Dakota, there's actually no houses that actually front on Dakota Avenue.
Okay,
Bill, to your point, maybe we address. First, and one of Shane's recommendations is we consider holding off on the Dakota Avenue portion. Until, since we just did receive an application for the Yellowstone, which would fill that north purple shaded area.
Yep.
And make connections then to, 210th and other areas, which then change the conditions of what you're seeing and
Yeah.
what you're mentioning today. We've done that in the past, again, the southern part of the territories, we've also, as we mentioned.
so it wasn't done in the southern part on Dakota?
We did that overlay later. We
Oh.
didn't do it at the same time that we did the rest of them because that development was being built to the south of it.
Okay,
And then,
The reverence.
the reference,
Reverence.
and then we,
Right.
so again, to avoid the wear and tear on the new.
Yep.
Asphalt, we reserved that, so that might be the,
I think when reverence paved, they added that pavement to it.
did they?
Didn't they change?
Yeah, that's my recollection.
yeah.
So we would just be consistent with what they did on Dakota.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay,
Correct.
all right, I'm just trying to look for saving some money.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I follow up on that? So,
Absolutely.
one of the roads in Casey. The one, I don't know what the road name is, that comes off of, Texas now, or, 27.
Casey Parkway.
So that probably takes more traffic than Dakota. Does that have an extra half an inch?
No. Probably not yet, because we're gonna redo those roads.
But when we did last time, did we put a half inch on?
We didn't have any of the capital improvement or anything when that was done.
I think to your point, right, is if we're not putting much more traffic on there, then. I look at prairie grass, that takes a significant amount there. Are we having to put an extra half inch on there? I mean, can we save $28,000? What's the downside of not doing that? And I know we can delay it until Yellowstone happens, but. Is there a reason we feel we have to do that, or can we cut back? I think that's what you're asking for, right?
Yeah, you did it better than I did.
Well, I said more time.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, council members, I think it all depends on how fast the developments fill out, and that's the thing that's hard for us to estimate. I mean, when these road connections are made through the Yellowstone and eventually the Rancho Credit River, and we'll have connections up to 207th and to the west out to 210th. I mean, we think that the traffic in Dakota will increase substantially. So not just go up by 20 or 30 cars per day, but probably will be like in the 800 cars per day range. So, I mean, there's gonna be a lot of homes in this area, and there's gonna be, Dakota Avenue to the south is maybe the best route without any conflict points on it, because, there's no individual access points onto it. 210th Street to the west is a nice straight shot, and of course, would want to deter as much traffic from using 210th because it's just straight, cars want to drive fast. And so we think that a lot of the cars will kind of go to the south, use through Dakota. And then at some point, there's going to be kind of a cutoff where if you want to go north to the cities for work, or, you're going to take that 207th Street through the ranch. And so that's also going to be a really busy intersection. So again, right now, the intent is to kind of plan for the future and set up a roadway network so that we have roads that can accommodate the traffic. So with that being said, I guess I would recommend that we stick with our past policy of the extra half inch. It's gonna get a lot more traffic.
So Shane, just, Jane, go next, but just thinking through this, because that's probably not a decision we need to make tonight, because all we're looking for tonight is feasibility study. And move forward to the public, calling for the public improvement hearing. And as you mentioned before, because most of this and most of the plans and specs and bids won't happen until spring, we'll have a little more information on timing of Yellowstone likely at that point.
That's correct. So at this point, all we have is an application. We don't have an approved preliminary plat, an
Right.
idea of what the first phase is gonna be or the timing for that construction. I think we've heard that ideally the first phase of the Yellowstone would occur in 2024. But at this point, we don't have an approved final plat with a developer's agreement. So using our best information available, we can assume that development will be, in a certain pattern. And then as we move forward, our assessment project or assessment hearing probably won't be until March. And by then I would expect to have a lot better information.
Yeah. Okay. Jay.
Looking at it, looks like we're gonna spend quite a bit on this street. And even if we were to hold off on Dakota just for the road construction, you get 46 homes that are gonna be built up in there as well. All of that truck traffic and everything else is also gonna be on this road. I think that it would probably be smart to make it a little thicker anyway for that. Even if we wait until they do the road construction, you still got a lot of traffic for construction of 46 homes afterwards. That's heavier than normal automobile passage. I think just to protect the road, we ought to be thinking about that. Otherwise, we could spend a lot more money.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else? Okay, no more questions or comments. I would be looking for a motion to approve resolution 2023-35, accepting feasibility study and calling for a hearing on the improvements for the 2024 overlay project.
Make the motion.
Thank you, Jay.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Leroy. So we got a motion and a second to approve resolution 2023-35, accepting the feasibility study and calling for a hearing on the improvements for the 2024 overlay project. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. 6.3, discussion of establishing proposal review committees. Kathy.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, we have been working our way through kind of council's guidance here, requesting requests for proposals for various services. The most recent, the last meeting, we went out and approved the request for proposals for city attorney. And tonight we had the approval of the consent agenda for the release of the proposal for city engineer services. So we kind of continue to move through those to see, just to do a review and refresh and look at what's out there and what's available. So as part of that, because as we've kind of said, staffing numbers are limited here, and to get additional eyes on the proposals to do the reviews, when we looked at the architect engineer, we did establish the government, kind of the building committee that has Councilor Satterback and Councilor Zanto on that, and reviewing the architect engineer proposals and the construction manager proposals that came in today. So just asking council to have a discussion if you would like to place form a committee to do the city attorney reviews, and also a committee to do the city engineer reviews when those proposals come in, as just kind of a means of moving them forward with reviewing the proposals and interviewing them. The alternative way would be for everybody to be part of the proposal review and submit those back to us, and then book work sessions to conduct the interviews by the council as a whole. At which point in time we need to coordinate schedules so we can get some afternoons or something that we can get council members in here for that kind of a work session. So just throwing it out there for council to consider how you would like to move forward with those, and if you'd like to set up committees to be part of that review.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy. Thoughts? Leroy.
I think we should all be part of the engineer, attorney. They're the most important that we have, or planner, whatever. We should all be part of that.
Not just have two guys. Or two gals. Picking trees or whatever.
Okay. Anybody else?
I agree with Leland.
I respectfully disagree. I think having a two-person committee working with the city administrator to do the interviews is good. I think everybody should get a copy of their resumes, everyone that applies. I think every council member should be able to ask questions via written questions that the committee asks the applicants, and then have the committee come back to the city council with their answers and their recommendation. I'm okay with that. And I think it'd be easier to administer. Those are my thoughts. So I'm in favor of this plan.
Yeah, I would agree, Bill. I think of the logistics of trying to get everybody together in a timeline to do something like that, when I think, to your point, if we pass out the proposals ahead of time, we should take in comments from everybody, and then, you know, make sure we answer those questions. As we come back with the recommendation, I think that's efficiency wise, so different than the architected building. committee piece.
Correct.
That seems to be working just fine the way that's going so far. Dave, any thoughts?
To be honest, I don't know if I have a strong opinion. For me personally, 2 more meetings is more complicated, especially if you do it during the day, just being honest. However, I thoroughly enjoyed the architect and the construction manager, so I think just for simplicity's sake, I'd probably say let's just have a committee, but I could go either way. I think. So.
Okay,
So everyone's looking at me, is that?
no, I don't think it was looking too, because it, you know, we're.
Mr. Mayor, mine has conditions on it though, what I said. So as long as that happens, I'm in favor of doing the committees where you get to ask questions, but it's just done by the committee. It's not done by you individually, and that we all get to see the applications. So we can at least know what we're looking at. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
You're
that's-
just avoiding having to have a public meeting because we're all together.
To do an interview.
Right,
And
right.
then also the scheduling, I think
Yeah,
scheduling is something like that, it's gonna be. Yeah, like you say, during the day, in the afternoons or something like that, you know, I think that'd make that difficult.
Yeah.
Okay, that being the case, anybody want to volunteer? I mean, I'd be more than happy to join one or both of these committees, to be honest with you.
I don't know anything about engineering, but I've worked. Anyone?
Okay. Go to engineering,
Good. That's good.
well, we need one more for each, I'd be happy to join whichever one, somebody doesn't want to do the other one.
Sure, the engineering I'll take.
Okay. And then, so we've got, Bill Markert and myself will take the attorney. And Jay Soderbach and Leroy will take on the engineering. And then again, Kathy, I think the direction is once we have the proposals, to please pass those out to the council and receive, some questions and comments from the council. As we move into this.
Sounds good.
All right,
Sounds like a good direction. We'll work on setting those up. I think, city attorney ones are due, I believe it's the end of next week.
Okay.
Start that one moving.
sounds good. So then, we're gonna move to 6.4, which is consent agenda item number 2.7. Approving the 2024 compensation table. Administrator Reynolds, would you please, take that?
Thank you, Mayor. We have presented in the packet the 2024 compensation table. Let's see if I can pull these up. Which area they're under right now.
Way up at the top. Page 20.
Yeah, I'm pulling up mine, so I can try and share it out here. My screen's moving forward, too many things open. So the 23 compensation table is what I have up right at the moment. We can see kind of highlighted up in the top was the first scales that the council approved prior to my being hired. We had a city administrator scale that was established and then a finance director scale that was established. And as you can see off to the side, we show that the administrator range is at 25% and the finance director's range was at 20.84%. As we've moved forward with approving the 23 scales for the city clerk, the planner one, and a public works maintenance salaries, we have followed and mirrored the city administrator's kind of step range and the percentage changes between each of the steps and the overarching 25% increase between step 1 and step 6. And so kind of two-part tonight with the 24 scale is looking at that and proposing in on the 24 scale here, you see this shows the finance director within a modification to the finance director scale that brings it in line with the rest of the scales. Typically within the city, you try and match all your scales to the same step and grade kind of differences here. So there's two changes with the 24. One, bringing the finance director scale into line with the remainder of the scales that have been established. And then also a 3% cost of living adjustment to the proposed scale. Looking across the cities at what we were looking at, most communities are ranging from 3 to 5% is what you're seeing out there. I pulled up the Abdo, knew that we were going to have a conversation on this. I pulled up Abdo did just a informal survey of communities during preliminary budget to see what they were doing for cost of living adjustments and for property tax levy increases, what they were looking at. I pulled that back up. They had 79 cities on it. 39 of the 79 were looking at a 3% cost of living. 14 were looking at a 4%, and 10 of them were looking at a 5%. And then you have some miscellaneous 1s, 2s, 4s looking at like 3.25, 3.5, 4.5, and one that's looking at a 5. It has a graduated scale between 5 and 7.8% that they're doing for cost of living adjustments. Looking in Scott County, the information from them is they had 4 cities in Scott County that replied to their survey. 3 of them were doing 3%. One of them was doing a 4%. Most of our comparables when we established our scales, we looked at kind of Scott County and kind of our neighboring communities around us, because that's who's going to steal our employees. Those are whose employees that with some experience that we may want to try and get. And then I also had data from 2 of the kind of non-Scott County communities. They were looking at a 3% and a 3.5% cost of living adjustment. So when we established our 23 scale, we were looking at the comparable communities. We established our scales and so forth to kind of put us into that competitive bracket with those people that we're looking at. So with a 3% cost of living adjustment on that scale, which should keep us into that same competitive range for 2024 on the scale. So that's kind of what we're looking at. All of our budget planning is been based off of what you're seeing here on this proposed 2024 scale.
Okay,
Happy to answer any questions on this.
thank you, Kathy. Council members, questions, comments?
So I had some concerns about the range, the pay increases. The scale, it looks like it's going from step 1 to step 2, everyone's getting about 5% increase. And it's my understanding that they get that without a performance appraisal. So if it doesn't matter how you performed, as long as you didn't do anything wrong and we didn't fire you, you'll get a 5% going to a new step. You're also giving that person in a year another 3% for the cost of living adjustment. So when you add those two up, it's not a full 8% because it's done in mid-year whenever your anniversary date is. But if you were hired January 2nd, you get 3% on the 1st of January and you get another 5% on the 2nd. Technically, that's an 8% raise. And there's not a lot of, it's a wonderful raise. I'm not, don't take me wrong, but it just boggles my mind that we'd want to pay an 8% raise. And I understand this is government, and I understand all the comps that you did, but they're all cities. There's no law against us like not following what other cities do. Other than you made the statement that we may have our employees stolen by other cities that pay a higher rate. Well, if the person is that good, I mean, there's no law against us paying anyone anything. I mean, we could pay whatever we want to pay, can't we? I mean, it's a contract, right? There's no laws that say we can't pay, we have to pay somebody a certain amount, correct?
We've established scales, so that's kind of how the scale works.
Yep.
It
So let-
typically is to do an adjustment to your next step on an annual basis. It's not just a range. For the employees, we've set it up as a scale, which is typically, like I said, an annual adjustment from step 1 to step 2. And then you're gonna put in your COLA. So if you don't make COLA adjustments to your scale, whether you do annual increases or not on your steps, what you face is you're gonna become less competitive, you're gonna fall behind everybody else, and you'll find yourself in a situation that I know like Elko did. They just did a compensation study, and they're not referenced in any of these numbers that I'm looking at because their scale is last I talked to them, they were looking at how did they make some pretty dramatic changes to their scales to stay competitive with where there's at. So we can put in there that.
Then I think
you
the
know,
scales are the scales are too generous. Then it should be instead of 5% for each step, it should be 1% or 0.5%, because to give people an 8% raise every year or 7% if it's a 2% COLA, to me, that's what the problem with government. That's why it's so inefficient, so expensive, is because they're giving out higher raises than what the private sector gives out. And if someone is that good, if someone tries to poach you, Kathy, we can bump your pay to keep you. Can't we? There's no laws that say we can't do that. We could increase your step in mid,
you
so.
won't have budgeted. It would be your problem is that you don't have any money budgeted
But we
to
could,
do mid-years if you don't plan for.
right, but then we'll have to figure out a way to pay for it. And we can do that too. I mean, we can find a way. So I just think they're too generous. That's why I wanted it pulled, and I think we should make a change.
I was gonna pull it if you didn't.
Okay, anybody else?
I thought when we set these things that the cost of living was included in that, because even at that 5% is really generous. I'd be more in line with 3% for the whole thing, which is more normal to industry and everything else as well. We don't have to be special because we're government.
Okay.
I agree with Jay.
So what's the proposal?
I would say, if you're asking for a motion, I would motion that we be looking at an overall 3% per year maximum. Inclusive of the step ups and cost of living.
So, Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Where do we sit with the finance director and city administrator right now? What step are we at? I mean, is it a moot point at this point? So what happens after step 6? You don't get anything?
Step.
You get the
Once-
COLA.
Once you hit the top
Mhm.
of a scale, so if you were to follow normal progressions of what you would see, this would be. You get annual step increases until you hit step 6. Once you hit step 6, then the only thing you're going to receive would be any cost of living adjustments as they come in. So, that's decided on an annual basis based off circumstances and what's going on. So if you want to not do that, then to me, you're changing our entire compensation schedule. And I need to know what that is that you want, because at this point in time, you have a step scale. That's where we're at in 2023. That's what it was approved. So if you're wanting to do away with steps, then we're changing the entire compensation kind of schedule and the way that was laid out in 2023 for employees. And so I kind of need to know, what is it you're looking at? This is a pretty, like I said, this is a pretty standard thing. You can put in there to say, you know, a performance appraisal based on positive performance appraisal before the next step. We can adjust it. You usually see anywhere from 20 to 30% is your range between your step one and your top of your scale.
Is it typically
it-
is there typically 6 steps?
It varies between communities. You see anywhere from 5 to probably 8 to 10 is the standard. So like I said, we've got.
So the 10 would get us to like 2% a year then for each step, right? If we did 10 steps.
10 steps at
At
the
the-
25%.
Oh, at the 25, 2.5% then.
20%, like I said, you know. What you're talking about is fundamentally changing what has been approved over, you know. This year as far as the pay scale, so where do you wanna go? And then that's gonna impact all of our budget numbers, so. You need to
Well,
understand.
I don't want to make it more complicated, but I think 8% is too high and I would, until we fix this next year, you know, I would just say 0% COLA if everyone's going from step 1 to step 2 or step 4 to step 5. I mean, that's what I would, and then work on it next year, because I don't want to change the whole comp plan tonight, but because all we're really talking about is the 3% COLA tonight, technically, right?
And the finance track.
Right,
And-
moving that one from 20 to 25.
Oh,
Was the other recommendation?
yeah, okay,
To
yeah,
make it in line with the other one.
yeah.
So, I mean,
Well, I wasn't even thinking about that, but that'd be fine for.
Yeah, in my opinion, it seems backwards to me. It seems like you'd want to keep your high performers with an incentive to stay longer. And it seems like it's doing the exact opposite. You pay more in the beginning. And then as they stay around longer, you pay less. So you're almost doing, in my mind,
Right.
reverse of what we want to do. Because if you're staying around for a long time, that means you're doing a good job. So I'm in agreement that let's not make it more complicated for budget purposes, but I think we really need to look at make them longer, more steps
Yeah.
and have them increase instead of decrease. And then you encourage people to stick around.
Yeah, Mr.
just wanted to- I just redid this, and there's different philosophies that what you use right now with the trouble in recruitment. Scales that are being established right now are tending to front load the money more than backload the money, because it helps to recruit and it helps with your recruitment to show that here's where your increases are coming in to get people in the door and to encourage them to stick around. So you're seeing, you know, so you have the two philosophies. You can front load it, which helps you with your recruitment, or if you're you have a lot of long-term employees, then people will flip their scales and put the money at the end to encourage the longevity. So, you know, there's two different philosophies as you look at it, or there's the philosophy is they just keep it flat the whole way across and you don't see any fluctuations. I don't know why the fluctuations were built in as they were when these were originally done. But I was trying to use them so we could get some standardization across the board as we look at additional scales.
I just point out, we really haven't had any issues, even though we perceive that we're having issues with recruiting people. We just hired the planner and I mean, this has all been going forward without any troubles, so.
Well, the planner was front loaded, right? So they're gonna see that additionally.
Yeah,
Does the planner know that he's getting a raise on January 1st?
No, that's for the next
Next topic.
conversation, but there's.
Oh, that's right,
We're
but
hiring-
that's how, I just don't, right, none of this, go ahead.
We're talking about hiring at the January 1st rate. with-
Right.
and G10.
Right.
I'd like to interject because I know why the difference occurred.
Here.
No, that's right there. Oh, push that button. Didn't come on. There you go. You're good. It's on. Don't push it again. Stop pushing it. It's on. Green light's on.
So when, way back in May, when we were hiring, the administrator, there was concerns about the rate. And we upped it to attract the best. So anyways, I just interject that.
And I'm not saying we don't want to hire the best, and we have the flexibility to pay whatever we have to pay to get the best. I just don't think that we should have. You get 8%, whether you're a good employee, a bad employee, an average employee. And I went to make sure, I went to the handbook that we just approved, I think last month. I couldn't even find performance appraisal reviews, like, are they in there?
There's a
Because-
section on it that's pretty mild because we don't have an appraisal system in place, and that's usually you set up an appraisal system, you set it up outside of that. There's just a reference tool that.
Okay.
We don't have a system in place at this point in time.
Okay, I'm still getting used to government and the way it operates. It just doesn't operate like the private sector at all.
In many government sectors, I won't say all, but many you won't see performance appraisals, and quite frankly, a lot of them, once you get unionized, it becomes impossible to insert a performance appraisal process or any kind of merit increase basis. We don't have unions yet, so you can have some flexibility.
When do we have to worry about unions?
Have a good pay scale and you probably won't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So to try and come to a solution here for tonight and move on. Bill, I think you were kind of onto something prior. Were you saying that you would want to approve the compensation table, but take out
Take out the COLA this year, work on if we gotta have the steps and it has to work this way, because that's the way government works, then make it not 6 steps, but make it 10. So it's not an 8% raise. It's like, I mean,
so
when inflation was 2%, it was like people would get paid 2 to 3% raises, and people would be, that's good. Standard of living is up.
what's inflation now?
Well, no, it's back down to 4. So they're gonna get. So yes, my recommendation or motion or whatever would be to not have a COLA in here this year, and to work out a new step table for 2024.
Okay.
Or in 2024. That would be my suggestion. And I'll be honest, when this was reviewed, I wasn't on the city council, but I really thought those steps too that's what the rate increase was going to be each year for employees, not that plus another 3%
Right.
or whatever the COLA is.
Yeah, you
But
have
that's
to have
shame on
some-
me for not
some
knowing
sort of a adjustment to the table, because it's to Kathy's point. If
Right.
you don't have an adjustment to the table occasionally.
I'd prefer not having it. I mean, technically, I'd prefer not having a table, and we bring people in at market rate, and we give them raises based on performance. And if we have to keep someone, we give them a little bit more. I mean, that's sometimes you have to do that if you want to keep someone, but sometimes you just can't afford to keep them. If they want to go to another, grass isn't always greener on the other side too. And so those are my
agree with Bill.
thoughts.
Okay, any other comments? We had a proposal, Bill made a proposal of adopting the table without the COLA.
And just to be clear, is that the 25 across, or is that the existing?
It's 25 for everyone, but except Dominique, but make the change so it's consistent, but we're going to change the whole table. Well, and then Mr. Mayor, I don't know if we need to put that in the motion where we'll readdress the table in 2024.
I don't know if that needs to be a part of this motion.
Okay.
We're not approving that piece of it today. That is an action for
Okay.
later, and I think probably one where you need to appoint a compensation committee and do research onto what
Okay,
other options there are.
okay.
Or something like that, but that we can deal with. After the new year. So Bill, are you making that motion?
I will make that motion.
So would you restate the motion just so we make sure we get it.
The motion is to accept a 0% COLA rate for 2024. So don't change the comp table. With the exception of changing the comp table to make it consistent on the steps for the finance director. Moving it to the same percentage for each step.
I'll
Get it
second
to-
as stated. Okay, so. Not to restate, but I'm trying to, so.
0% of COLA and
you
accept the
Making
recommendation.
a motion to approve the compensation table with the 0% COLA and making an adjustment for the finance director's table to 25% to be consistent with the other tables.
That's what I was trying to say. Yes, correct.
That's why I wanted to make sure that we
Yes.
got that correct. So, all right. So I have that as a motion. And I've got a second by Jay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Moving on to 6.5, which was 2.10 on the consent agenda, approval of the hiring of Matthew Holsworth to planner 1 vacancy. Kathy, would you please introduce the subject?
Thank you, Mayor. We went through interviews for our planner position. And we had, I'm trying to get back to my notes here on this one. We had 6 applicants for the position. We selected 3 of them to come in for interviews for the job. Based off of the interviews, we talked to references for the 3 that we interviewed, and recommendation is we put a conditional offer out there for Matthew Holsworth for the planner 1 vacancy, subject to council approval. He's available to begin work on the first day or December 4th, 2023. We had recommended the 3296 to just start him on the 2024 scale, but that would now have to adjust to the step 1 because we're not doing the COLA increase. So there'd be a reduction of that to $32 an hour, which would be the step 1 position on there. Happy to answer any questions.
I'm okay with that now because it's back to where it was. What did we offer him? Did we, in the offer letter, was it the 2024 rate or the 2023?
2024 rate is what we had talked about, so I'll have to go back to him.
Okay. I guess we'll test out whether it's a good rate. So I have I don't think I need to talk about it then.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. With that, and does somebody want to make a motion to approve the hiring?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
So, Jay, is your motion then to approve the hiring of Matthew Holsworth, the planning 1 vacancy?
Yes.
So I've got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. So that'll end all of our general business items for tonight. Move into staff and council member reports. And we've got 1 item scheduled for that tonight. Kathy, do you want to start that one or?
Pulling this up. So Scale has been working on their 2024 legislative priorities. Scale hires a lobbyist to kind of work on legislative priorities for the Scott County area. And kind of we come together and we establish kind of where the priorities are at and what we want to work through and then hire the lobbyist to do that. On Friday, the legislative priorities, we had our Scale general membership meeting, and we invited all of the legislators that represent around Scott County to come to the meeting. And a presentation was gone through on the 2024 legislative priorities for Scale. So you can see, we kind of scroll through this, the top priorities that they listed as far as policy is going is looking at development costs and supporting that developers pay for the development costs. Most of those costs currently have statutory authority to charge, but they're seeking, infrastructure accountability, basically to offset for the costs of infrastructure, street infrastructure. As far as development goes, support in the housing area, or additional funding and funding that comes out of housing. Reforming the Metropolitan Council governance structure, there's reviews that are currently ongoing, and there's recommendations that are being made as far as not putting this into an elected position, but really looking at making it so it's appointed. But the cities and counties can appoint representatives instead of it coming from the governor.
Like that.
Roads and bridges, this is coming up here currently, where the MnDOT, they're building roads, but then they turn over ownership of those roads to the cities or the counties or townships. And trying to promote that MnDOT should maintain ownership of those bridges, as they're the safety concern, and they're the best placed position to maintain those the cost and the responsibilities of the bridges. Kind of the secondary policy positions that are being supported is school resource officers. We don't have this concern here locally, but very much so. A concern here within Scott County is the terminology and restrictions that the legislation that was passed in 23 placed on school resource officers as they're in the schools, and their ability to deal with situations the same as an officer that's called from out in the street. A school resource officer would not be able to do the same things that a police officer called in would be able to do, and kind of trying to address that and go back to the way it was before the 2023 legislative cycle, which allows for greater freedom and flexibility for school resource officers. Discussions about the per pupil formula on schools and education, and looking at legislation to help address the chronic absenteeism. Top priorities for capital bonding. First one on the list here is improvements to the Quentin Avenue and bridges in Savage, as they're looking at the Highway 13 improvement projects that are ongoing through Savage. This picture here you see is of the Quentin Avenue bridge that becomes a one-way one-way road as it goes through there, and with the improvements that are coming, this will become more of a thoroughfare road for Savage. So I'm looking for funding to help address this one-way situation here. The Louisville segment of the Miriam Junction Trail, to connect that, it's 4.3 miles of trail. The Innovation Center for Entrepreneurs, promoting entrepreneurship in the county, actually for across the region. So that's in Shakopee. The Prior Lake Outlet Pipe Lining, so putting in a liner for the cured in place liner for the outlet that helps to drain floodwaters out of Prior Lake. And then the Interstate 35 and County Road 2 interchange development, planning to work on those. So those are priorities that Scale has presented as kind of our overarching Scale Scott County priorities that are out there. Tony Albright is the lobbyist that is hired by Scale to put forward on these, and then Perry Mulcrum with Scott County also works on lobbying during the legislative session. And Mayor was involved with helping set this up, so if you want to add anything else to the comments.
Yeah, no, thank you, Kathy. So just so everybody's clear, and if you don't know what Scale is a organization of the municipalities and organizations within Scott County. It's really unique to Scott County. It's actually really neat. It's really becoming a powerful voice at the legislature. Because as we are all in different districts around, getting everybody to having that one voice to champion for items that affect Scott County as a region, more than one person or one entity can take on themselves. So the goal of these was to work on priorities in that that realm, especially some things that we believe that there's gonna be some traction on. You know, the road bridge one's a little bit of a new thing, but it's something that's popping up, and I think Sand Creek Township might be facing MnDOT giving them a bridge. As you can imagine, a small community probably should not own a bridge. So that's probably one that's a little unknown that needs to be brought up. Definitely hopeful that some, you know, Met Council reform can happen this section, and not gonna hold my breath, but it keeps getting closer and closer.
Does someone have to sue them to get it closer and to get it?
I don't know.
No,
I think we just need to keep on our legislators to finally get something done instead of pushing it down the road again. But I think the interesting piece here, and one of the things to be conscious of, and hopefully we can have our name under the bonding request at some point soon, hopefully the next year, for as we go into a big project, doing some sewer and water, hopefully we can, you know, build these relationships, and as we go forward, champion for, preserving some housing in Credit River, and
yeah, I was gonna ask you, what is the process? So all the mayors get together and you have all your wish lists and then you
so
pick and choose?
every city was given the opportunity to submit a wish list of priorities and or bonding requests.
Yeah.
And then Scale has an executive committee, which is basically most of the mayors or an appointed person.
Yeah.
From that, we appointed a subcommittee. Well, it was more of a volunteer committee that got together. And then, that committee appointed a chair, or voluntold a chair, because I was the last one standing and didn't have some good reason why I shouldn't be the chair of that committee. And then we sorted through all those and said, okay, what affects as you can imagine, everybody's got their own priorities.
Sure,
right?
sure.
What affects the region the most, and what is something that is, specifically when we get to the bond request, what is something that's ready to go? Let's not try to push something that's not ready, because that's not it's not good practice. You're not gonna get anywhere doing that, right? So there was a pretty long list that we had to sort down through, and it took us up to, let's see, we presented those last Friday. I think we didn't have the final ones till Tuesday right before. So I think the presentation piece was great. We had, I think, every legislator was either in-house, one in-house or online.
I know it Purcell, Bakeford, Heath, Cosnick, Duckworth, Barr, and Lindsay Ford.
Some couple of them came and went during it, but I think most of them were there. A lot of good feedback from Duckworth. He was texting me during there, really appreciated it, and I think hopefully we moved the needle a little bit during that presentation. So what this also allows Scale an opportunity to do is that as legislation goes on, whether it's letters of support needed or opportunities to contact your legislator as votes are coming up, it allows Scale as a whole then to get those out and say, hey, this is one of the priorities that we're pushing. Can we, your representatives will, the people you represent would like you to vote for this or that, or yeah.
So how is Scale financed, and who's paying the two individuals at the end?
Who's paying the lobbyists?
Yeah.
There's a dues that we pay to Scale on an annual basis, and those dues from all the communities are what's utilized to pay for things like the lobbyists or other things that Scale promotes. We have had conversations, and I'm sure that will continue to come up because there's some funds available in looking at potentially some reductions in those dues coming up as they look at needs, because there's been some structure change on all that. So the Tony Albright is paid for, so he's paid for out of the Scale dues, and Scale pays for that one. Perry is a Scott County employee, so he lobbies for these things, but he's also doing things directly for Scott County.
And when we were a township, we paid dues to this also, so.
It's a population program.
Yep.
Is how it's determined. Like I said, there's been some changes. There used to be an employee that was in place, I think, for some things.
Yeah, it
with
was an
scale.
analyst, last year that didn't get re-upped in the budget for this year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So there's some discussions about what's needed as we kind of move forward with it, but.
all right. So that should be in that. Anybody else, council members or staff have any, other reports for, tonight?
I attended the same meeting.
Yep, Gabe was there as well on Friday. Leroy.
The culvert got cleaned out on White Drive and we're gonna add flared ends to it. Which it needs, and they're gonna do that next week or the following week, so.
Okay,
Take care of it.
awesome. Anybody else?
Mayor, I have just a couple of points here, just for updates from staff. Just kind of let the council know, today was the closing for the construction manager proposals. Our building committee has those proposals to review. We did receive 5 of them in today, so we'll be reviewing those and setting up interviews as needed. And then just a reminder for everybody, it's the truth and taxation meeting is our next meeting on December 4th.
All right.
And I'll just add that I've met with the mayor and the city administrator talking about drafting the council bylaws, operating norms, and we're making good progress on that. And we should be able to produce something for the council to review in the next meeting or two
Yeah, I think,
to be effective in January.
I think our goal was to get, something out in December just for review and modifications that we can adopt in January.
Yep.
We're getting anywhere with any land.
We've got discussions, we've got a couple of properties that have an interest and are willing, and at this point in time, until we get the architect. That contract has finally been negotiated and finalized. It's in the mayor's packet to sign this evening. And then we can get them kind of looking at the properties along with us to do the analysis of kind of that site selection to make sure that properties that we kind of move forward with discussions on is the best property for us. So it's not been forgotten. We are working on it, but that's part of working with the architect, is have them kind of do some analysis of it as well. To ensure that we don't just pick one and then end up having increased building expenses because conditions on the land and so forth. So we're working on that one.
Price is gonna go up by the time we get to pick one.
I think there wasn't any commercial property for sale in Fairfield.
All right, so any other council members have anything? Then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Abe.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Leroy. But a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
Okay.
Cool.
That's your count. My. And there's.
Is it initial? Okay.